In our headlines on this Thursday afternoon, September 7th, here in South Korea. Addressing his counterparts at the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and beyond, President Yoon Suk-yeol claims collusion with North Korea on the weapons front will undermine global peace and stability. Meanwhile, U.S. State Secretary Antony Blinken visits Ukraine Wednesday local time to reaffirm Washington's commitment to Kyiv's cause against Moscow's invasion with a fresh aid package. And the European Union shares a list of 6 tech giants, including Apple and Meta, subject to pro-competition rules under its Digital Markets Act, which for now does not affect Korea's Samsung. We start in New Delhi, where President Yoon Suk-yeol strongly condemned potential collusion on weapons with North Korea, claiming that any such interaction undermines the stability of South Korea and that of the broader global community. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
Seoul has warned that any attempt at arms cooperation with North Korea would be a direct threat to South Korea and global non-proliferation, as President Yoon Suk-yeol urged Indo-Pacific countries, including China, to cooperate for peace and prosperity. This came as Yoon attended a summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations in Jakarta, joined by Japan and China, in an ASEAN +3 session on Wednesday. First, amid speculation of a potential arms deal between North Korea and Russia, Yoon said attempts at military cooperation with North Korea that harm the peace of the international community must be stopped immediately.
If a major member of the UN Security Council cooperates in military technology or engages in arms trade with a state subject to the most stringent sanctions by the UN, this not only poses a direct challenge and threat to global peace, but also poses a direct threat to the security of the Republic of Korea. We are attaching great importance to it and looking at it very seriously.
Yoon requested that the country's president cooperate in denuclearizing the North and ending its illicit funding activities, such as cryptocurrency theft and the dispatch of workers overseas. Asked whether this was a message aimed at Beijing to put pressure on Moscow and Pyongyang ahead of their potential bilateral summit, a Yoon official told reporters that the president's remarks were made as North Korea's illegal actions are carried out on Chinese territory and on the high seas. He said China did not respond specifically to Yoon's request to fully implement UN Security Council sanctions against the North's regime, but added Beijing wouldn't intentionally take actions to increase Pyongyang's weapons capabilities. He also hinted that a separate meeting between Yoon and the Chinese premier on Thursday is being discussed. Amid geopolitical tensions, territorial disputes and ideological differences, all the more pronounced by President Xi Jinping sitting out the ASEAN and G20 summits this year, Yoon called for a resumption of the trilateral summit and mechanisms between South Korea, Japan and China in order to overcome critical challenges facing the region in joint efforts with ASEAN. As the rotating chair of the +3 countries this year, Seoul underscored the need to expand currency swaps, trade and investment, and sustainable support for small businesses in ASEAN. Yoon also outlined measures to increase food security, innovation and investment in young scientists. Yoon will renew his call for a firm and decisive response to North Korea's threat, as well as greater cooperation for peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific, as he attends the East Asia Summit on Thursday and the G20 Summit in India over the weekend, where the United States, China and Russia will also participate. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Jakarta.
Right, and as my colleague Oh Soo-young just mentioned, President Yoon Suk-yeol has called for a crackdown on North Korea's nuclear and missile development through stringent sanctions as the regime's hostile intentions threaten the entire world. Speaking at the East Asia Summit in Jakarta, President Yoon added North Korea's nuclear weapons ambitions stand in flagrant violation of UN Security Council resolutions and harm the peace and stability of countries within the region and beyond. He also highlighted the need for tangible action against North Korea's illicit fundraising activities and to better address its human rights violations. President Yoon also touched upon tensions in the South China Sea, asserting that attempts to unilaterally change the status quo by force are unacceptable. He further raised concern about the war in Ukraine and the humanitarian crisis in Myanmar, while reaffirming South Korea's commitment to a rules-based international order of inclusion, trust, and prosperity. Now, on the margins of the ASEAN-related meetings, President Yoon also sat down separately for summits with his counterparts from Malaysia and Vietnam, as well as from the Cook Islands and also Canada. Arirang covers those talks.
President Yoon on Wednesday in Jakarta, Indonesia, met with a number of leaders on the sidelines of the annual summits involving the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. With the Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar bin Ibrahim, the two leaders discussed developing bilateral relations. They both agreed that the two nations are seeing achievements in sectors of cooperation including trade, investment and defense, and highly assessed that the sectors are expanding into future industries such as a response to climate change. President Yoon also met with the Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh now for the third time. Yoon highlighted that Vietnam is South Korea's major partner country in rolling out Seoul's Indo-Pacific strategy and urged for continued bilateral ties. The two leaders consented to close ties in the supply chain of key minerals and defense as well. Earlier on the same day, Yoon also had a summit with the Cook Islands Prime Minister Mark Brown, where he pledged to increase the size of the Cooperation Fund for Pacific Island nations. He then met with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and said it felt like meeting a close friend.
제가 작년에 취임 이후에 나토, 또 UN, 그리고 작년에 G20, 또 올해 히로시마 G7, 또 이번에 이런 다자 여러 차례의 또 이번에 빌뉴스에서도 얼마 전에 뵙고 이런 수많은 다자 회의와 또 양자 여러 차례 양자 회담을 통해서 이제 우리 저스틴 트루도 총리님은 가까운 친구가 된 것 같습니다.
In response, Trudeau also expressed his gratitude towards South Korea for helping to fight Canada's wildfire.
It's been a year of us working together through wonderful times, but also through difficult times. The support of Korean firefighters was something that was felt deeply across Canada during our difficult summer. And
the Canadian leader also highlighted that Canada is closely cooperating with South Korea in a variety of sectors, including measures to impose sanctions on North Korea. Incheon, Arirang News.
And the U.S. has reiterated its calls on North Korea against any potential weapons deal. White House National Security Council Strategic Communications Coordinator John Kirby on Wednesday urged Pyongyang to refrain from engagement in Russia's war in Ukraine via weapons provision, pointing out that the regime had previously provided rockets and shells to Russia's Wagner Group. Highlighting the U.S.'s security framework with South Korea and Japan, Kirby also spoke of close monitoring of the collaboration among North Korea, China and Russia, countries that regard the U.S. as, quote, a kind of common enemy. And a Chinese delegation is poised to partake in North Korea's 75th founding anniversary on September 9th, that is this coming Saturday. Now, this is according to Pyongyang state-run media on this Thursday, which added the delegation will be led by Ryo Ko-chung, Vice Premier of the State Council of China. Also, back in July, China sent a delegation to North Korea to mark the 70th anniversary of the Korean War armistice. Elsewhere, the Biden administration's top diplomat was in Ukraine this week with a fresh aid package and an unwavering pledge of support as the country continues to counter Russia's invasion. Our Choi Soo-young has details.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken made a surprise visit to Ukraine on Wednesday local time and announced an additional $1 billion of support. Blinken pledged ongoing U.S. support for Ukraine and stated that plans are in place for support in the areas of energy, security and humanitarian assistance, in addition to military support and reconstruction efforts.
We will continue to stand by Ukraine's side, and today we're announcing new assistance totaling more than $1 billion in this common effort. That includes $665.5 million in new military and civilian security assistance.
Meanwhile, the support package includes depleted uranium munitions which are designed to pierce thick tank armor. The munitions use is controversial due to possible health risks. It is the first time the U.S. has provided depleted uranium munitions. The support package includes other anti-tank weapons as well as ammunition, air defense systems and demining assistance.
I discussed longer-term sustainable security arrangements which will provide ongoing security assistance and modern military equipment across land, air, sea, and cyberspace, as well as training and intelligence sharing.
Secretary Blinken, in his fourth visit since the war began, has expressed great optimism, noting significant progress in Ukraine's counteroffensive. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba also emphasized the strong support of the United States, describing it as a robust partner.
If the West cannot win in this war, then what is the war that the West can win? And when I say the West, I include Ukraine to this list as well.
Meanwhile, on Wednesday, an attack on a market street in Konstantinivka in Ukraine's Donetsk region killed at least 17 people, including a child. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Korea's military technology continues to garner much interest at a defense trade show over in Poland. Our correspondent Choi Min-jung has the latest.
On day 2 of the 31st International Defence Industry Exhibition in Poland, South Korean defense companies promoted a variety of weapons to win additional orders. Hyundai Rotem announced that it is discussing a second contract for K2 tanks with Poland, following last year's order of 1,000 tanks.
It is a little later than initially planned, but because it is such a large and long-term project, there are quite a few things that need to be discussed.
Hyundai Rotem's representative for Europe added that there are many neighboring European countries, including Romania and Lithuania, that are showing interest in replacing their tanks. Meanwhile, Hanwha Aerospace signed an MOU with state-owned defense firm Polish Armaments Group for the localization of its Chunmoo multiple-launch rocket system. Last year, Poland bought some 280 Chunmoo rocket launchers, and the MOU is expected to lead to a second deal in the near future. On top of this, Hanwha Group promoted its Tangbogo 3-class submarine, as the Polish Navy is actively looking to procure submarines as part of its recently relaunched Orca submarine program. S&T Dynamics, a South Korean defense manufacturer, also promoted its products.
Many Polish soldiers had a look. People showed great interest in the 1,500 to 1,700 horsepower transmission for the K2 tank and the 1,000 horsepower K9 transmission.
The CEO of Polish Armaments Group showed his appreciation for South Korea's cooperation and noted that the two countries are very similar in the sense that they both understand the dangers stemming from threats from a neighboring country.
We have entered a very far-reaching strategic cooperation already. If there's a threat to Poland or South Korea, then one country can help the other.
The CEO added that although it may not be visible now, he's confident that cooperation between the two countries will come into effect if one country is attacked. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The European Union has identified 6 tech giants subject to its Digital Markets Act that seeks to ensure fair business practices on core platforms. Our Ising-jae reports.
The Digital Markets Act is a set of laws set forth by the EU to curb the power of 6 major tech companies. The 6 companies, Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, ByteDance, Meta, and Microsoft, will be subject to special regulations to prevent abuse of dominant market positions in the bloc. The European Commission announced Wednesday that the 6 gatekeeper companies, meaning large platform operators that act as a kind of gateway between consumers and sellers, will be subject to special regulations under the Digital Markets Act from next year. By applying stricter regulations on such companies, the EU plans to fundamentally block practices in which these companies use their superior market power to raise entry barriers and undermine a fair competition environment. Companies designated as gatekeepers are strictly prohibited from cross-using users' personal information acquired through their services when conducting other service projects unless they have user consent. However, there was good news for South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics, as the company has been excluded from the list despite being mentioned previously as a strong candidate. Companies that fail to comply with the latest EU laws will face major penalties, including a fine of up to 10% of total annual sales. That figure could go up 20% for repeat violations. The gatekeeper companies will be granted a grace period of approximately 6 months to comply with the DMA before full implementation of the rules in March 2024. 이승재, Arirang News.
Back here in Korea, Incheon International Airport is seeking to ease the hassle of checks at departure halls and boarding gates by expanding facial recognition technology. My colleague Lee Soo-jin was at the airport.
Passengers at Incheon International Airport are facing new technology. The new Smart Pass service at the country's largest airport streamlines the passenger identification process by using facial recognition technology. Passengers no longer need to take out their passports and boarding passes at departure halls and boarding gates. All they need is their face. Both foreign and South Korean nationals aged 7 and above can register for the new service with 2 ways to opt in. One way is by downloading the SmartPass mobile app and registering by scanning your passport and face. While airports in other countries have already implemented similar facial recognition systems, the one at Incheon Airport is the only one where users can register on mobile apps. Passengers can also register on site at self-check-in kiosks. Just like the mobile app, all you have to do is scan your passport and register your facial biometrics 30 minutes before you need to use the service. The mobile app and the self-check-in kiosks are both available in English, Korean, Japanese, and Chinese. Your facial identification data is also valid for 5 years.
And now you can simply walk up to the camera and go through right away without needing to show anyone your passport or your boarding pass.
So far, people from 46 different countries have registered, according to an airport official. It has also been well received by passengers since it was first introduced in late July during the peak summer holiday season.
And you don't need a lot of people manning it, and it's all very automated. You just check in and then you're kind of done.
Before we used to wait a long time, but the identification process is a lot more convenient and faster, which is why I decided to sign up for this service.
Incheon Airport officials say that it'll also enhance security as human biometrics are impossible to duplicate. And it's being done without compromising passengers' privacy.
We regularly delete private passenger information according to related laws.
The airport is looking to expand the service, which is currently available at all 6 departure halls and 16 boarding gates, so that it can also be used at all gates by April 2025. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
On the cultural front, Frieze Seoul is back this year here in the capital city following its inaugural exhibition last year, much to the delight of art lovers in the region and beyond. Our Shin Se-byuk was there.
The International Art Fair Frieze Seoul has returned with its 2023 joint edition being held with the annual Korean International Art Fair Seoul, commonly known as KIAF, at the COEX in the capital's Gangnam-gu district. Following its successful debut in 2022, Frieze, one of the largest art fairs in the world, has come back to the South Korean capital. This time it features works from over 120 leading international galleries from 30 countries.
Frieze, all Friezes, look for cities that have an amazing sort of cultural landscape and appreciation for creativity. So Seoul, I think, is a fantastic choice. Of course, you see a lot of creativity in all types of fields, whether it's film or fashion or music, of course, art, design.
The main section highlights a variety of works, such as those by master artists such as Pablo Picasso and Henri Matisse. 4 global mega galleries, including the Gagosian, a worldwide network, and PACE, are participating in this section. In particular, the Gagosian presents Korean artist Baek Nam-jun's iconic masterpiece, TV Buddha. South Korea-based galleries, including Kukje and Lian, are spotlighting significant global creatives from across generations. The art fair also features 2 smaller sections, Frieze Masters and Focus Asia. In the Frieze Masters section, a diverse array of works from antiquity to the 20th century welcome art lovers.
And there is Focus Asia, a section dedicated to showcasing solo presentations from young galleries based in Asia.
Of those presented, what really catches the eye is a large-scale fabric installation by young South Korean artist Woo Han-na titled The Great Ballroom. Woo, the winner of the inaugural Artist Award at Frieze Seoul, finds such fairs provide artists with opportunities to gain global popularity.
South Korea may be relatively small in size, but it has a vibrant cultural scene and soft power. With a multitude of world-class art galleries converging in Seoul, it's a fantastic place for artists to tap into exciting opportunities.
Running alongside Frieze Seoul is the 22nd edition of Kiev Seoul. This year's Kiev Seoul brings together 210 galleries from 20 countries, including 140 local exhibitors. Frieze Seoul runs until September 9th, and Kiev Seoul is keeping the art vibes flowing until the 10th. 신세벽, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the United Kingdom, a nationwide manhunt is underway for a suspected terrorist who escaped a prison in southwest London. According to authorities, 21-year-old Daniel Abed Khalif vanished on Wednesday morning local time. He was last seen wearing a prison-issue chef's uniform, and it's suspected that he escaped by attaching himself to the underside of a food delivery van. As part of their response, authorities have increased security at border checkpoints and ports. Police say he poses a low risk to public safety, but have urged people not to approach Khalif. Khalif had been awaiting trial on terrorism and Official Secrets Act offenses. Now, the death toll from floods in the south of Brazil has now climbed to 36 people. Officials announced this on Wednesday and said search and rescue operations are ongoing. The state of Rio Grande do Sul was worst hit, with rising waters flooding streets and submerging houses in several cities. There were also several landslides. The flooding comes after more than 300 millimeters of rain fell on the region in less than 24 hours. Downpours have since stopped, but are forecast to resume between Wednesday and Thursday, and more flooding is expected. The disaster comes after over 40 people were killed earlier this year in landslides and flooding in Brazil's São Paulo state. And finally, legendary English rock band The Rolling Stones are set to launch a new album, which will be their first since 2005. It's called Hackney Diamonds, with the name coming from East London slang that refers to broken window glass from a robbery. The 12-track album is set to hit shelves on October 20th. It contains collaborations with stars including Lady Gaga and Stevie Wonder, as well as earlier recordings with drummer Charlie Watts, who died in 2021. The three-time Grammy-winning band formed in 1962, with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards among the founding members. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We had a breezy start to the day, but highs are soaring fast into the 30s in most of the western regions, with a heat advisory remaining in place for Jeollado and nearby areas and parts of Chungcheong-Namdo province this afternoon. Meanwhile, the east of Gangwon-do province is as cool as yesterday. The whole nation will have plenty of autumn sunshine, no chance of passing rain today, and the sunny skies will boost UV rays to high to very high in large parts of Korea. And especially those under heat advisories need to take care as UV rays reach very high levels there, so please have your sun protection handy. Highs will jump nearly 10 degrees from our morning temperatures, and Seoul and Gwangju will be topping out at 32 degrees Celsius. A late burst of afternoon summer heat will continue to be felt across Korea for the next 5 days under sunny skies and should stay this way until the wet change sweeps in. But we do need to put a light jacket on when the sun is not out. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And those are the top stories at this hour. We have our panel session coming up right after this break. Thank you for now.